Section 203 of the Federal Voting Rights Act requires election information to be translated into specific languages if those languages are shared by residents who don't understand English well. But that translation can be a problem, and it's a concern on the Navajo Nation. Jen Fifield of VoteBeat USA wrote about the issue and efforts to improve election information on tribal lands. Good to see you again. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much.
Section 203, that's pretty much what Section 203 said, doesn't it?
Right. If you have a large community who doesn't speak English well, you need to provide them a way to understand their ballot.
How serious of an issue is this on the Navajo Nation in particular?
Well, we have about 7,000 residents that don't speak or write English well. They're not completely literate in English. And so these are mostly older people who have lived on the reservation maybe their whole life, referred to as elders, and they need a way to listen to their ballot.
Yeah, and we're going to get to that listening aspect in a second. But the legal requirements are there. What are the legal requirements? Let's put it that way.
Basically, you have to be able to vote in a way that anyone else is able to. You have to get enough information to fully understand your ballot and to understand what you're voting on. Okay,
and the impact on the Navajo Nation is important because that's historically an oral history by way of language, not necessarily writing stuff down, correct?
Right, and that makes it extremely challenging, especially just because translating from English to Navajo is difficult to begin with, but now you're trying to translate these complicated election terms.
So the plan is to do what?
Well, the plan is to figure out a way to create a translation where older Navajo residents who don't speak English are going to understand their ballot. I went to a meeting where the county and the state came together with a translator to try to figure that out.
But doesn't it also include just like audio? I mean, will the translators be standing by, will be there, will there be some sort of audio message? How's it going to work?
So typically you provide an audio recording. So there's an accessible voting device that people who may not be able to read their ballot can use in any other circumstance where they listen to the audio of it. That audio has a Navajo option. There's also supposed to be poll workers there who can help translate.
Yeah, I was going to say, as far as the people that do help translate, how are they chosen? How do you make sure they're saying the right? I mean, how are they translating correctly?
Well, that's what my story was. That's what I looked at because, I've heard in the past that especially the audio recording is confusing and long. And so people have been concerned that it hasn't been communicated well to these voters. And then, you get different counties hiring different poll workers. Are they certified to speak the language, both languages, that kind of thing? And so that's I think it's a very non-transparent process for a very key voting group in Arizona.
Non-transparent. As a closed meeting, you had trouble getting information, didn't you?
Well, yeah, they invited me to the meeting, and then when we arrived to be there, and it was a closed meeting just with the officials, they told us to leave. We got back in after a while, but I think that goes to show how sensitive this topic is and how there has been conflict in the past.
As far as conflict in the past, does that include people not correctly honestly, you could do anything from, say, your yay vote could be a nay vote. I mean, I don't think it goes quite that far, but it could.
Well, it could. Especially when you have something like abortion that's culturally sensitive to Navajo residents. If you get a culturally sensitive translation and you don't really understand what the measure is asking at all, then you might not fully understand it. In this meeting, I ran the translation after by someone who said, we think that sounds more like a miscarriage than abortion. Oh, wow. So there are complications that come with not providing a proper translation.
And there, I would imagine, cultural sensitivities in other areas as well.
Well, absolutely. I mean, there's a sex trafficking, one that mentions sex trafficking, and that one of the people there said she had trouble with that because she doesn't want to say rape. She doesn't think that that's appropriate. Interesting.
There was a 2018 lawsuit you wrote about. Basically, it's just saying there's not enough translators out there. How was that settled? What happened to that?
Yeah, so in 2018, after the 2018 election, they said you need to find a better way to provide people more information in Navajo. And so they're supposed to be translating more, and they're supposed to be doing it in a way where people are getting, the full yes and no explanation, for example, for a proposition and what that means. I didn't see that at the meeting, and I'm not sure if they're going to be provided that this year.
So with that in mind, will things appreciably improve this go-round?
Well, I mean, the Secretary of State's office says that they have improved, and counties say that they're trying the best they can to get proper translation. That said, there are still critics out there saying it's not working yet.
And we should mention that the Native American vote in area, that's pretty significant, isn't it?
It is. I mean, this is a group that in 2020 showed up more than it typically does, and then Biden won. I mean, there's never a way to know who decides elections, but this is a key vote. If you do get a high turnout from them, it could help.
And last question, in doing this story, it's a comprehensive story and very well done. What surprised you? What did you learn from doing this?
Just how difficult it is to translate from English to Navajo. For abortion, for example, you have to explain what an abortion is. It almost defines the English word of what happens during an abortion. And that makes this extremely complicated.
Yeah, extremely complicated and uncomfortable, I would imagine, for a lot of folks,
Correct.
especially the elders up
To
there.
explain what happens during abortion is
Yeah.
uncomfortable for anyone.
Well, great work, Jen Fifield, VoteBeat USA. Really good stuff. Thanks for sharing. We appreciate it.
Thank you.